efficiency. And as if we're, okay, sabi ko nga kanina, just like what I've said, this portion of the text that we're going to study, it's just a simple, 4 verse that we're going to study. But it is important for us to understand where does this comes from. Kaya kailangan natin maintindihan yung outline ng book. From chapter 1 to chapter 7, the main focus is Christ. Okay? The superiority of Christ to leading figures under the Old Testament. That is from chapter 1 to chapter 7. Actually, if we're going to read the entire letter of Hebrews, it is from chapter 1 to chapter 13. 13 chapters. But from chapter 1 to chapter 7, it focuses only on Christ. Basically, the author is expressing the superiority of Jesus Christ compared to the Old Testament figures like Moses and Christ superior than the angels. It was discussed on chapter 1 and chapter 2. Christ is superior to Moses. It was discussed on chapter 3 and chapter 4. And then Christ is superior to Aaronic priest. That was discussed from chapter 4 to chapter 7. We're not going back to those chapters in detail, but I'm just simply giving you a summary of those chapters. So from chapter 1 to chapter 7, ano yung dinidiscuss? What is being discussed? The supremacy of Christ compared to the Old Testament figures. The angels, Moses, and Aaronic priests. Okay? Now, on chapter 8 and chapter 10, the Hebrew author discuss what? Basically, the Hebrew author discussed the covenant. On chapter 1 to 7, it's Christ. On chapters 8 to 10, the covenant. So, I start it with C, Christ, and then covenant. Chapter 8 and chapter 10, the supreme and the sufficient sacrificial work of Jesus Christ as our high priest. Remember, we discussed about Melchizedek at that time. So, the Hebrew writer expounded on the new sanctuary and the new covenant. The Hebrew writer on those chapters discussed about the new covenant which is in heaven. The new sanctuary which is in heaven. And also on chapter 9, he compared it to the old sanctuary. And then on chapter 9 and 10, the Hebrew writer described the better sacrifice. Because remember, when we are talking about covenant, when we are talking about the sanctuary, we're talking about the temple, what they've been doing. Remember, during the time when the people are still in Judaism, most of them are doing a lot of works inside the temple. Remember, they are doing sacrifices inside the temple. And then that's the reason why the Hebrew writer, when he introduced the new covenant, he was trying to compare, this is what you're doing before, and this is what we have right now. The new covenant in the Lord Jesus Christ. Again, what is the main theme of the book? Christ's supremacy and Christ's sufficiency. Now, on chapter 10 and chapter 12, kanina Christ and then covenant. On chapter 10 and chapter 12, the calling. So 3C, Christ, covenant, and calling. Chapter 10 and 12. The call to follow Jesus faithfully and with perseverance. So basically, on chapter 10 and chapter 12, the Hebrew writer make a calling to the Christian converts from Judaism to have confidence with the Lord Jesus Christ, to enter the new sanctuary, to go against the persistence in sin, to persevere in faith, and to encourage to persevere in the face of hardship. And again, he also exhort the Christian for a holy living. And he also explained the crowning motivation and warning. Okay, so that is from chapter 1 to chapter 12. So again, the main focus is about Jesus Christ. 1 to 7, the Hebrew writer exalted Jesus Christ. On chapter 8 and 10, he exalted the works of the Lord Jesus Christ. And then in chapter 10 and 12, he urged the new Christian, now that you know, this is my urge for you. I'm calling you to become faithful to Jesus Christ. Okay, so that's clear. Now, what about chapter 13? Which is the one that, actually, chapter 12. Okay, this is part of chapter 12. How about chapter 12? This is basically the conclusion. As you can see the word therefore. Oops. Okay, so let me read it again. Sabi ganon, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 to 4, it said, therefore, since we are surrounded by such great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangled. And let us run with the perseverance the race marked out for us. Okay, let me pause for that. So, we basically, we have learned, just like the Judaizer people, those newly converts, that Jesus Christ is the supreme and the sufficient person, that we have this new covenant and we have this calling. So now we're jumping to this conclusion. Now that we learn, now we have to do this conclusion. He said, since that we are surrounded of a great cloud of witnesses. I'd like us to focus 3 things on these 4 verses. We will concentrate on these 4 verses. The first point, I don't have PowerPoint, but my first point is tatlong G, 3G. Kanina, 3C, right? Christ, covenant, and calling. This time, 3G. Number 1, the game. What about the game? You know, we need to realize and remember that we are in a game, which is a race. Right? We Christian is set, marked to run. And what is the purpose? It says there, to encourage the great cloud of witnesses and to develop our character. Sabi nga therefore, since we are surrounded by such great cloud of witnesses, so meaning there are people looking at us, right? So basically, the main intention of the writer is to encourage us to become a good testimony to this great cloud of witnesses. And also, sabi niya ganon, and let us run with perseverance, with endurance. Sabi niya ganon, to develop character. Each one of us has our own kind of race, right? You know, probably one of us, we have a different kind of race. The race here is kind of a symbolic thing, diba? All of us is running in a race. We have to realize that we are in a race. I don't know what is your race. Probably, some of you are hoping to accomplish something, and God has put you in that position, but we need to understand that we have to finish it, that we have to run it. You know, sabi nga nila, just like what they said, there is no winning if we are not going to participate or if we're not going to join. My question to you right now is, are we running? You know, are you running? Meron ba kayong tinatakbo? Meron ba kayong pinupuntirya? Remember, when you run, you are focusing on a goal, right? Now, like what I said, probably how many hours from now? Like 4 hours from now, it's gonna be a new year. Is it going to be the same? Are we going to become like a mere spectator? You know, we're just simply going to be a witness. No, this time we need to run. This is the time na tayo naman, you know, this is the time that it is us who's supposed to be running already. Right? How many years have we been sitting down and watching people run? You know, this time it's gonna be me. It's gonna be you. Diba? It's time to run. Sabi ko nga kanina, there is no winning if we are not going to participate. Right? You cannot accomplish something unless you start doing it. Right? that is, anong tawag nila to? That's the analogy of this running. We can't just be mere spectator. We need to involve and we need to do something. Right? That's number one. We need to realize that we are in a game. And we have to remember that this game that is set before us is to run the race. Number two, we need to realize and remember that we need to run according to the rule. We have to run and not walk. Diba? Kasi sometimes people, when they would like to accomplish something, they don't run. They just simply walk. Diba? Run symbolizes urgency and exerting an effort. Ibig sabihin, if we want to accomplish something, if we have a goal, we need to exert some effort. How many New Year's resolution have you failed already in the past? Tons. Right? Why? Because probably we get tired of running to accomplish it. Right? So, or probably some of us, when we are trying to accomplish our New Year's resolution, probably we're not exerting effort. We're just simply, you know what, it's okay. I don't know what is your New Year's resolution, or what is your goal, or what is your objective. I don't know what is the race that you're going to run this coming year. But one thing for sure, if you want to accomplish it, exert an effort. We need to run. Number two, we have to follow the rules, lest we get disqualified. What do you mean, Brother Adel? As we run, hindi pwedeng shortcut, di ba? I don't know how I can explain this, but in a marathon, in order for you to win, you have to follow the rules, right? We need to run. We cannot just simply sway, right? You need to focus. Third thing that we need to understand about the game, we need to realize and remember that we haven't reached the finish line yet. Diba? Kailangan yung ma-realize natin that we are running, that we need to run according to the rule, and the race is not done yet. When is the race going to end? In this sense, once we meet the Lord, right? So the important thing is we need to understand that this game that God has placed us is the game of His ministry. The race to propagate